it's going to mean that they're not going to be getting the full service that they're paying for. So I do think we need to have a look at, or it does need to be reconsidered on the basis that the figures we just need more figures. It needs to be split more so we can see, you know, a difference in it.
Thank you, Councillor. I take those points on board, but I am conscious that all these figures are sort of retrospective to a degree. We are in very unprecedented times with this pandemic, and I'm conscious that sort of facts, number of schools adjacent to the swimming pools is key to the issue. I'm also conscious that part of the recommendations of the cabinet report was that the feeling I get from the comments made by the cabinet members speaking this evening was it is always the intention of the cabinet to review what happens at Garstang, and from those facts they can then roll out the opening of Poulton and of Fleetwood, and hopefully we'll get all our pools open as soon as possible. But until, you know, until we have some hard facts on how much and how many people want to use pools, and that by trialling Garstang they can enable them to get those hard facts, then we can't go forward. And I can't see any other way around it. We do know that people do say a lot of things and don't actually do them. I'm sure if you made a straw poll of everybody and everyone, they'd all say yes to £1,000 donation, but whether they actually get round to collecting it will be another matter. But anyway, I digress, and I do feel that this meeting has slightly digressed on more than one occasion. So has anyone any sort of further comments or to bring to the table?
Yeah, we've got Councillor O'Neill, who's put his hand up, Councillor Ballard, Councillor Birch and Councillor Longton that I know of.
So if we take them in that order then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with Rob on this, and I believe there's a lot more to look at, Chair. I don't think we should be thinking of closing this meeting anytime soon. There's plenty to look at with regard to the decision that was made by the Cabinet at that moment in time using the figures that they used. Those figures were not correct. They weren't good enough to use to make that decision. I'm not disputing that they may be making the right or wrong decision right now, but I think that's something as a group and as a committee we must discuss. We have to.
Sorry, Marianne, who was next?
Councillor Ballard.
Yeah, I understand what people are saying, but it's whether you've got to understand what the ONS facilities are, what our duties are. We can, as I said at the start, we can go back and reconsider. It can go back to the cabinet member. The cabinet member then says no, and that's final. But I do go back to what our chairman has just said. This is a chance for us to look at our leisure centres and to get feedback to our leisure centres, and so we can move forward. If we try and delay, the delay won't have an impact to what we're trying to achieve. So we must make if we say refer back, it goes back to them. They say no. You still haven't got an argument. ONS do not make the decision to overchange. We can only say, yes, we support it, or no, it goes back for referral. At the end of the day, we need this information to move forward for the whole of the borough, for our residents. So I do say that is what we need to support.
Marianne, who's next?
Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. Extracting the information, Alan Vincent gave us an awful lot of information, but basically I took from his statements that the reasoning for opening Garstang Pool as opposed to any other was an exercise to determine whether opening a swimming pool was going to be a viable option or not. And by opening Garstang, which appears to have the lowest overheads, and that is what was taken into consideration, it wasn't usage. And was that the correct decision to make or not? I think is where we stand. The whole argument is based upon opening Garstang for a trial period to determine whether it's going to be viable or not. And it's not, the argument is not about how many people have or will indeed use it. That's what I've determined from this whole debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. I don't think it's necessarily viability is the issue. It's although it is obviously key, but I think it's to get a response of what take up the pool is going to be used. And until we open the pool or a pool and be able to measure what take up and what uses that pool has, we don't have any facts. And I can understand why that the cabinet have stated that in their recommendations.
Well, just continue to say, well, if you were going on how many people are going to use the pool, I would have thought it would be more appropriate to open a pool that has a higher usage, and that clearly isn't the case, is it?
Yeah, I feel we're getting bogged down in figures here. This usage figure, does that relate to COVID conditions? Because obviously in COVID, there's far greater conditions implied, and although the pool is bigger at Fleetwood, I appreciate that, having swum there myself with my children. Will the conditions allow that greater numbers to use the pool at once? I have to concede that I am not completely au fait with the COVID conditions for swimming pools, but I'm under the understanding that you can't use changing rooms, and is that the case?
Between the lockdowns, I know other swimming pools at De Vere, and you could use the swimming pool and changing rooms were open, but they did limit the number of people actually in attendance. You had to book before you could go.
So it's whether the committee is minded that the steps by the cabinet for a phased opening and a trial at Garstang are appropriate. You know, and I think the portfolio made the comment that it's just unfortunate they had to choose one and rather against another one. You know, I'm sure if in an ideal world we would want to maintain all the pools, but the sort of the constraints of cost and the pandemic has put us in the situation we're in here, and we're trying to do the best we can for our residents. Yes. Has anyone any other comments?
We've got Councillor Longton next.
Councillor Longton, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The questions asked related to the cabinet decision and the reasons for that decision based on the call-in request. And I don't feel, based on the answers that we received from the cabinet members who appeared at tonight's committee, that those questions have been answered. It's not about what happened in 2007 or who did what to whom. It's about the reasons that they made, the specific decisions that they made, and the data on which those decisions was based. And it's clear to me from data that's been provided, today and very recently, that there are serious question marks about that data and about the basis of the decision. So on that basis, I believe that the decision should be referred back to be reconsidered in light of all the information that is now available. I also believe, on a wider point, that overview and scrutiny need to consider the setting up of a task group to consider the future of Wyre's leisure strategy going forward and how that can be best delivered and funded to serve the needs of all the population of Wyre. Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, Councillor Longton, but that's not to this evening's debate, is it? We can certainly, I think what you've mentioned is already on our task group list and will be looked at a later stage, and when it comes to agenda on one of our more regular meetings. Sorry.
We've got Councillor Fail next, I think, Chair.
Go on, Robert.
Thanks, Chair. You mentioned usage figures, and I think if the usage figures are wrong, then the projections, unfortunately, are going to be wrong as well. And the problem with the usage figures, as we've said before, is there was no breakdown into gym and pool for Fleetwood and the same for Poulton. We just didn't have that data. But that data, I believe, is now there and usable. And, that's one of the key issues in the call-in. It talks about what the, I'm just trying to read the sound set of, that's it, with an alternative and sound set of statistics with a covering explanation for usage differences to stop unfair comparison. Well, we've had loads of unfair comparisons with saying Garstang is greater than Fleetwood and Poulton. It's just not true. If you take the 9 days that Fleetwood and Poulton opened after, I think it was the 3rd of August rather than the 25th of July or something like that. So it's about 9 days anyway. If you take that into account, immediately you will see that the actual usage of all 4 gyms were fairly similar. And to be honest, if you actually look at if you're taking those 9 days in, Fleetwoods were probably higher than some of them. So I don't think particularly the issue with COVID. I don't think we're going to see much of an issue that way with regard to pools. You'll get the same issue that you did with gyms with the pools. So I don't think that's something we need to look at. What we do need to look at is these new set of data that's available. Whether this committee wants to look at it is up to the committee. But if not, then I don't feel any alternative but to return it to the portfolio holder to produce a report that has this data. We've got the ability to show the number of days open, the number of days closed, produce some normalised or levelled figures, whatever you want to call it, so that we can compare apples with apples, not apples and pears. And that's what we've seen consistently. And that's subjectivity. We need to take that out of it. It's objectivity that we need. And there's so many things missing, including the school and swimming club data. We've got information now about the schools. It seems like virtually every single school wants to go to it. Where was that in the report? We simply had a document produced that wasn't fit for purpose. It should have been thrown out at the first review, that document, and said it's not got all the data in which we need to make a sound decision. So I would like I think to go back. There's not just that reason. The travel distance. We just need to get that data and assumption. So we've got an assumption in there that says all residents will be able to access facilities within a reasonable travel distance. Now we're being told, though it wasn't in the report, that we can go to Moore Park. Well, fine. If you want people to go to Moore Park, that's your assumption. Put it in the document. Where was that assumption? It's just standard stuff, really. And it's the same with the national curriculum. Where was that mentioned in the report? It wasn't. Well, there's a national curriculum that states that every 11-year-old child leaves primary with the skills to keep themselves safe. Document it. Tell the reader whether you need to adhere by that or not adhere by that. It's nothing to do whether it's what my opinion is or anybody else's. It's just stating what the position is. A report should be neutral. It should provide all the facts, all the options, and then it can recommend a particular one, but at least leave it open to discussion rather than making it a predetermined outcome. And without all those